Hello, this is Mike Arnott, Course Engineering, and we're here to go through our next Mach2 instructional video. In this case, we are going to talk specifically about how to generate and send automated email notifications from within the Mach2 world. The intention behind this, the purpose behind this would be able to use logic and events within Mach2 to generate and send an email to a list of recipients. Typically, that list of recipients would be a configurable setting somewhere. Um, reference some of our other videos regarding creating settings pages might be a good way to configure that. But the basic idea is there's going to be an event. Something happens that you want to notify people. It could be a timed event, every day at midnight, send something. At the end of the shift, send something. It could be a Plex error happened when I tried to record production, and therefore I want to send the content of that error message to someone who can take care of it. But the basic idea is from the Mach2 logic engine, you want to create a message and send that message via email to one or more recipients. Okay. So to do that, there's actually some background requirements that you have to satisfy on the Mach2 side. The biggest one is I need to have an email service configured. I need to have a way to send an email. Mach2 does not send the email directly. Mach2 will connect to your SMTP service provider, and they will use that as the vehicle by which to send this email. So in setting up an email service or outbound transaction, if you will, a way to send an email, the first thing that you have to do is to configure that email service. By default, it is not configured in Mach2 because, again, this is customer specific. Not all customers want to use email, and obviously every customer's email system is going to be different. So we can't really have that set up and ready to go out of the box. So first step in setting up Mach2 to be able to send an email is to create that email account. Right? So for that, there is actually, of course, a palette called the email module. And in the email module, there's two things that you're going to have to get. You're going to have to get the email service. This is just a generic placeholder, but you have to have the email service to be able to create email accounts. So in Mach2, you don't spend a lot of time in the services area. Most of the time, you're knee deep in the driver section. But if you want to add that email service, that's the place that you have to put it, is in the station's service config/services location. So really all you have to do is take the email service and drag and drop it into your services location. It will then show up at the bottom. I now have an email service with nothing in it. Nothing to configure or do here. This is literally just the placeholder. What you do need to do though is I need to add an account. In this case, an outgoing account, an account that I can use to send email outbound. All right, so I'm literally, again, just going to take the outgoing account from my palette, drag and drop it on the email service, give it a name if you'd like. But the basic idea is you now have an outgoing account. So here, this is going to be specific to your organization, right? Basically, you're going to have to talk to your IT people and find out what is the address of my SMTP server. And there's also some settings in here that they're going to have to provide you, right? Not everybody's, again, outbound email address is going to be a little different. So to be able to configure that properly, again, you're going to need knowledge. You're going to need knowledge from someone that, basically explain this to you. It's set up on your computer already probably, so it's not all that hard to find, but you do have to track it down. For us at Cores, I'm going to go ahead and configure our Office 365 configuration. If you use Office 365, you can use all this except for my password, of course. PCP port is 587. My account. Oops. And password. Specifically for the Office 365 settings. Again, this is where you get into things that are going to be specific to your organization or to your service provider. So in this case, for Office 365, they do not use SSL, they do use TLS. So those are settings that, again, you're going to have to know from your, whoever on your side can provide that information. Other things that are important here is understanding what the pull rate is. So the pull rate is literally just that. It's how often it's going to check and send emails. So if I leave this at 1 minute, this demo is going to be kind of boring because every time I do something, I'm going to have to wait up to a minute for it to actually happen. So I'm gonna take this down to 15 seconds. It's basically just that. That's the interval at which it's going to attempt to find and send any emails that are added to the queue. All right. So there is some queue information down here. You can see right now the default queue size is 100. I'm sorry, the default maximum queue size is 100. Also, an interesting stat that you might want to change is max sendable per day. This is basically saying if we ever get to 100 emails in one day, it's going to stop sending them. So this is a default you might want to change depending on how you're using it. You might want to put a larger number in there. So what I usually do when I'm setting this up is directly from this outgoing account, you can actually send a test email. So I like to do that. You can actually right click on the outgoing account directly, and under actions, there is a send. So this is just a quick and dirty dialog box, a way to go in and populate this, send it, test it, see if it works before you bother building logic to try to use it. It's handy to know if you actually have everything configured properly. So I'm going to pause the video for a second and fill this in so you don't have to watch me typing. All right, so I keyed in the values that I need. Again, this is one of those places where every service provider might be a little different in terms of what information you have to provide and what information gets validated. There's lots and lots of things that are going to be specific to your provider, and we can't tell you exactly what the correct setting for those is. Hence the reason that I'm testing this, so you kind of get a feel for what the process is to make it work. So I have an email. I'm going to attempt to send this. I purposely forgot one setting, so I'm going to show you what it looks like when it fails. So I'm going to say OK to this, and notice what happens. My queue size went to 1. So now I'm in that polling interval, right? I attempted to send one, and it failed. You can see errors all over the place. My status is down. I've got this last poll failure cause here. The message was actually discarded. And if you go through the error message, you can see why. Client was not authenticated. That's the basic thing that I forgot to turn on, is there's a flag here for use authentication. All right. So again, you're just going to have to kind of experiment with this and see what happens. The thing to watch is this last poll success and last poll failure. So these two timestamps really are kind of telling you, in that, my case, 15-second interval, when was the last time that it was successful? When was the last time that it failed? So it failed at 1:12 because that's when I queued up that message to send, and I couldn't, again, because the host told me that there was, it was not an authenticated message. So I'm going to go through this process again after I turn on the use authentication. And I will then do another test email. And again, I'm going to pause the video here. All right, so I filled out all that information again. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK to that. Again, notice my queue went to 1. And now we're just going to kind of wait the 15 seconds until that next poll. It already happened, and voila. Notice the number sent went to 1. So my queue got processed, and I successfully sent one to myself. Notice the error message doesn't go away up here, and it's because this is the last poll failure cause. So just because I still have an error message up there, it doesn't change to success, if you will. But again, I can't see my last poll was, or my last failure was at 1:12. My last success was at 1:14, and again, my number sent went to 1. So we now have one successful email sent just through the test client. So now we're ready to use this account to be able to go into our wire sheets and add and change things there. So let's go to an existing wire sheet that we have here. And the object that we're going to use to actually trigger an email and send it from Logic, it's a little different. It's not actually in the email service. This is a Cores developed module or object. There's a couple of different places where you're going to find this same object. Originally, it was in the module called Cores Free. It's also in the other Cores module that everyone should get in the habit of using, the Cores Palette Combined module. This is a really great palette because we pulled pieces and parts from all over the place. And one of the ones that we did is in the networking section. We got a couple of different email objects. All right, so again, in that Cores palette combined under networking, we have Cores Mail and Usable Mail. Cores Mail is kind of the newer version. Usable Mail is kind of the old version, so I would recommend using the Cores Mail object. You're just going to drag and drop it onto your wire sheet, and you can already kind of see what it takes as far as inputs go. You got a to, you got a subject, you got a body. So those are things that you would build and populate in your wire sheet. I'm not going to do that for you. You should already be comfortable with the idea of concatenating strings and building messages and generating an event that is going to then trigger the send action of my Cores Mail object. So just going to walk you through the basics of how the object works. Obviously, it's got an enable disable. You can link that to Logic or a settings page if you'd like. You have to select the account. So remember when I created that account up here earlier, it was called outgoing account. And therefore that's the only choice that I have in my list box. You can have more than one outgoing account. So I'm just gonna pick that. And then the rest is just settings. Here you're going to go in and populate things like what does the from say? So I'll put in Mike, and what does the to say? This is the email address of the recipient. I honestly don't remember off the top of my head. If you have more than one recipient, you're either going to use a comma or a semicolon. I don't remember which is the right one. It might take a little experiment, but basic idea. In here, you're gonna put in an email address or more than one email address of whoever you would like to send this email to. All right. You're gonna fill out the other fields, the body, the message, right? The subject, sorry. This object actually has the ability to attach things. I've never used that feature, but I understand it's kind of cool. So there actually is a way to include attachments with this triggered object. But just walking through some of the other settings, a debounce period. This is there because you probably don't want to flood someone's inbox with 100 emails if the machine is in a funky state and it keeps throwing the fault bit. The fault bit keeps going on and off. So this is kind of a filter or throttle, if you will, where if the debounce is active, it won't send multiple emails out. So you can make that as long or as short as makes sense. All right. So it's really all that is required is a to. The from, it's not important. The to is important, and then subject and body. So we can just fill in something there, and body. So we have an email, and now we can trigger this to send. There's two ways to trigger the Cores Mail object. You can either invoke the send action, or it does have a slot called trigger. And the trigger is a false to true, so it's a Boolean. It will actually generate and send this email when a Boolean input to that goes to true. I'm just going to fire it manually. And again, what's happening now is that went into the queue. So if I go back to my outgoing account, you should see that now, again, I have one in the queue. It's waiting for that 15-second poll interval, and assuming I did everything correctly, the number sent is now 2. Right? So my logic, based on me manually triggering that send action, has sent that message to my inbox. And I don't have my inbox on this computer. I'd show the message to you. But it was successful. It did go, and we have that information. Mhm. So this does have a good sends count. So again, same thing. I've got kind of a feedback status here, so I can see that I had a good message go out and with the timestamp on it. So that can be part of the logic that you use for that. So the rest is up to you, right? The event that decides when to send this email, that's a logic question. It's a process question. It's up to you. What is it that you're trying to enunciate? When something happens, I want to generate and send that email. And the rest, same thing. The body, the subject, the to, those are all variables that you can control, whether they be through settings pages or through logic. Like I said, you can concatenate a message together. You're going to have to build that to what makes sense to your process. The other thing I did want to bring up is the limitations. So this email that we're sending is plain text. This is not an HTML email. You cannot include formatting and tags and things like that. So this is a simple text email. So don't expect that I can go in and put a bold and a highlight and all kinds of HTML tags around my body information. It's not going to get translated by the email client on the other end as HTML. It's going to get translated as text, meaning you're going to see all those tags and you're not going to have bold or highlighted or anything like that. So it's just a simple string message that gets sent to the client. All right, that's it, everyone. Thank you, and stay tuned for more videos to come.